All right, all. Welcome back to the tying bench. Today we are going to tie one of my favorite patterns for local Stillwater lakes. It's just a simple kind of a woolly booger type pattern, but just different. It's called a balanced thin mint. So what I've done is I've actually just put it down a little thread base on this hook, and then I actually use a sequin pin and then just a 5/32 bead just right over the tip of that fly. That way it kind of balances out. You'll see whenever it's kind of better, but what it does is it really helps a leech pattern to actually float horizontally in the water column rather than vertically. So what you do is you just really kind of attach that piece. And then what I like to do is, because you have that sequin pin and you can kind of see how there's just that little bit of difference in the bump. That way you don't have to try and make yourself a thread bump. What I like to do is tie in 3 different parts of marabou. So I usually try to make it about a shank length long. And I tie it right at the back of that sequin pin. That way you don't have that big kind of drop off. So right there, and then I'll just cut that. And then after a little bit of that olive marabou, I use a little bit of brown marabou. Let's see, put that right there on top as well. Kind of lash that down. Smooth, easy thread wraps. And then just cut off that tag end. Sorry if I keep getting my fingers in the way. I'm still trying to get the hang of this tie-in video stuff. And then a little bit of black marabou. And once again, a little about shank length long. And just tie that down. 1, 2, 3, 4 good wraps. And then kind of really just cinch it down. Then I'll come back in and I will trim that piece off. And then you can kind of just smooth over these wraps just to make it a little bit of an easier transition. And so once you have those on, what I do is I actually use just one long strand of Flashabou. And I just split that thing in 2. And then you have 2 little parts of Flashabou on each side. And so you want those to be about the length of the tail. I don't know if you could see, but roughly about the length of the tail on that side there. And just kind of let that piece go forward. Wrap that down. That way it comes off on that side. Then you just put these other sides down and just both kind of wrap them back. That way they're on both sides. And one more good one right there. Perfect. And then what I like to do is just snip them off right there at the tail and make that a pretty easy tailing piece. And then a little bit of just brassy, I don't know if you could see that in there, brassy copper wire. I like to have a little bit of the brassy copper wire because I feel like it's a little bit more durable for a slightly bigger pattern. And I just put that right against the side there again and just push that piece of it down. And then one more piece on this far side. If you're right-handed and a right-handed tire, you just tie it in on the side of the hook nearest you. And it's just one more strand of Flashabou. And what that'll actually do is that's going to be your counter rib, I guess, to add a little bit more flash to it. And then I use far more peacock herl than I think probably most others would use. But the reason I do that is because if it's a bigger pattern, I don't like running out of peacock herl. And I think as you're wrapping some of this forward, a lot of people will not find long enough peacock curls. And so I'll go about 3/4 of the way up, and I usually grab 4 strands, and then you kind of just twist them. And you make yourself a little bit of a rope. There you go. Just like that. And as you're wrapping this forward, you try to keep it somewhat tight. You don't want those hurls to become kind of undone a little bit and then cause problems for you. So right about there is good. And I know it seems a little bit goofy for some people, but I will actually tie these off, lash them down, snip the tips. And then I will come in with 4 more strands, especially like I said for your longer thin mints that you're going to use. And then you actually will come around and under the balance part of that hook. And once again, kind of wrap them, cord them up. And then the reason that I use 2 different sections of peacock curl is you don't have to worry about stretching out your materials, you know. Plus, also support your local fly shop. I mean, if you can try and get in there and help support them by buying some materials, even if it's something as simple as peacock curl, get in there and do it. They need your money. Support your local businesses. It's important. And perfect. So then just capture that. And that's perfect. And then what I like to do is I will actually take this Flashabou, come around and counter wrap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Should have got a longer strand, but it'll work. It'll get us through. Oh. Actually going to use these. I don't know why I didn't start with these. These are what they're used for. Just to kind of capture that. Makes it a little bit easier. There you go. And what this does is not only gives it a little bit of segmentation and flash, but I have tied this pattern, of course on accident, without the flash counter rib, and it has not been nearly as effective. So you think it may not be as big of a deal, but for some reason to the fish, it matters. No clue as to why, but it definitely matters. And if you can be consistent in your tying, do it right multiple times repetitively, then that's what not only makes you a good tyer over time, but it's what makes it a lot easier. You take that stem piece, you capture it on each side, and then you can barely see, but I'm just going to snip the tip of that. And what I like to do is actually grab my hackle pliers. Hackle pliers are an amazing little tool to be able to use for whenever you need them. So I take the tip of this hackle stem and I wrap. So I will actually do 1 wrap there and then slowly start spiraling this back. And as you're working through this, as much as possible, you have to be a little bit cautious of how much tension to have, because those hackle stem tips can get a little bit fragile and you don't want to snap them off. And so what you do is you have that, your hackle pliers there, and you actually capture it. So right behind that tail, you will capture that stem right there. And then you will kind of try to work it through all of the hackle fibers without mashing too much of it down. Sometimes it's a process working through some of these fibers, but really does make for a much more durable fly. Perfect. And then you just capture that piece of copper wire, give your thread a little counterclockwise spin, cord it up, and then you can kind of helicopter that wire off. And then just boom. Cord it up again, and then just whip finish. One behind the bead, and then two for good measure. Try not to get any of those hackle fibers when you're snipping your thread there at the end. And then a little bit of super glue right near the bead, and that should add some durability to both sides of the fly, and just really kind of helps to make sure that those thread wraps are sealed. There it is. There you have it. Simple, easy, effective, deadly lake pattern.